All right, let's talk about counter-argument and consensus. And what we're going to do in this presentation is we're going to use two sources. I'm going to show how they could be used in consensus, where they're agreeing and working together to make a point. And then I'm going to show you how they can be used in a counter-argument working against one another, okay? But the goal of this is really to kind of give you a format and a few examples of what a counter-argument paragraph looks like versus a consensus paragraph. So let's start with our sources. I have two political cartoons here, and I'm going to give you a second to think about them, read through them, and look at the details in the images. But what I want you to think about with these pictures is, do you think America has a healthy political climate? And then, do you think that America has a problem with race? So take a minute. If I don't give you enough time, please pause the video if you have to. But take a minute, read through the text of both images as well as the details in the images to see what arguments are being made in each. Alright, like I said, if you need more time, go ahead and pause the video to look at them. But one detail that I think might have gone over your head, but is something to keep in the back of your mind, is the idea of political party symbolism. And if you didn't know, the Republican Party is symbolized by the elephant. The Democratic Party is symbolized by the donkey. So take a second and see how that might shape your understanding of the arguments being made in each image. Alright, so let's break down each image before we kind of move on to talking about consensus and counterargument. So let's start with the first. Like I said, the elephant symbolism is an association of the Republican Party. You'll notice on the lapel of the suit it says a congressional witch hunt. The paint can says suspicion. There's a target around American Muslims. And the text at the top says, if you're not harboring terrorists, what does your little religious community have to fear? So this image is an accusation against the Republican Party, in which it is arguing that as a group, when this image was released, they were going after Muslim Americans, targeting them, putting pressure on them for answers and knowledge, as opposed to other racial groups or religious groups and identities. And so overall, you would say it is a criticism of that, of the Republican Party's actions at that time. So that's image A. Image B has, again, the elephant, but now we also have the donkey, which I mentioned, is a symbol for the Democratic Party. And the elephant says, people hate your bill and we're targeting you in the November race. To which the donkey says, race attack. Obviously, taking words out of context, focusing in on the wrong parts of the words, which would imply that you could say that the Democratic Party is overly sensitive, that it manipulates the narrative being presented by the Republican Party, in contrast to the other picture, obviously a more negative view towards the Democratic Party, okay? So that's kind of our two images that we're going to use. Like I said, we're going to start by talking about consensus, and I'm going to show you how together these images could work to make an argument, and then we're going to talk about how they can be used in opposition to one another. So here's our example for consensus, and at the top I have kind of a formula for you. Anytime we're talking about consensus, it's as simple as A plus B, therefore Y. So source A, source B, therefore I know this is the basic fundamental structure of a consensus argument, okay? So let's look at that with color coding and look at the sample. So the claim that these two images could make together is that America irrefutably has a volatile political climate thanks to the two-party system. So both images, each image is criticizing one of the national parties. So I could argue using both of them that they are evidence of a volatile political climate. That's the claim I'm going to make, and here's how I would use both sources in consensus. So the first part is talking about the first image. So it says, as captured in political cartoons, both the Republican and Democratic parties criticize the opposition. For instance, the image of the elephant, a common symbol for the Republican Party, characterizes Republican congresspersons as malicious and hateful, painting a target on Muslim Americans. This generalization is one of many used to discredit the Republican Party. So what I've done is I've presented source A, and I've explained what about that image shows that volatile political climate. So then I continue. However, it goes both ways. The donkey in the second image is a clear reference to the Democratic Party, and as shown in the dialogue, this group is being criticized for taking words out of context or hypersensitivity. Just as the Republicans are depicted as bigots, the Democrats are shown as overly sensitive and manipulative. Okay? Again, I'm referring to details from the image, referring to the dialogue. In the other one, I refer to the target on the Muslim American. And I've presented both sources. This source shows this source shows this, and now here's my therefore. These two images, one from either side of the political median, illustrate how unhealthy the American political climate really is. Now that's kind of a very brief commentary. You could definitely go on to explain, relating back to those images, about the hypersensitivity and the maliciousness of the Republican Party. That'd probably be a more well-rounded kind of 4-level commentary, but it is there. So what I've done is, here's source A, here's source B, together they say this, and that is the fundamentals of a consensus argument. This is what you're more familiar with when you think about like past research papers and stuff. You decide this is my claim and pick out evidence that supports that. So this kind of structure of argument is more familiar. Now let's talk about the more complicated version, which is a counterargument. Counterargument is, if simplified to a formula like we did with the other one, is A, however, B. So what that means is source A says this, however, source B says this, therefore I say this, okay? And the way that I like to think about that is splitting it between the they say and I say. So the they say is the alternate perspective, or the perspective that's in opposition to the claim I'm making, and the B is what I say, what I believe, what I think, okay? So in a counterargument paragraph, we want to make sure we start with the they say this and end with the but I say this. Both can use evidence, because with synthesis we want to bring these sources together and use them together. But we really want to build that I say half to be more compelling, because that's where we're arguing our own. So here's a sample paragraph, and let's get the color coding on here so we can see. And let's read through this one. Race, regardless of what a once vocal majority says, is still a problem in America. Too often, complaints of racism and injustice are brushed off. Unfortunately, words taken out of context have devalued the real tragedy that is racism. The cartoon in which the donkey takes words out of context is a clear example of this manipulation of the term. So the green is my source A, which in our situation would be image B with the donkey. And it's referring to words being taken out of context. Because as you remember, the image says, the donkey says race attack, when that's not at all what the elephant was saying. So I've presented that if my overall claim, like I said, is about race being a problem in America, I'm going to use image B, the one with the donkey, to talk about how, yes, there are instances where people take words out of context. There are instances where people overreact and are too sensitive. There are instances where people abuse what is a very real problem in America, okay? So that is the they say. I'm going to say, yep, they say this, but now I'm going to switch, and I'm going to say, regardless, all instances of racism and even accused racism must be taken seriously, or else it becomes the cultural norm to look at others with suspicion. The target painted on the Muslim American perfectly narrates this dangerous discourse of fear and suspicion. In this country, thanks to a collection of vocal Republicans, a metaphoric target has been placed on minorities. Until this climate of negativity and intolerance is corrected, America will continue to have a problem with race. So that's where my image A comes in. So essentially what I've done in this is I've said, they say people take words out of context or are too sensitive. The I say, which is in purple or blue, whatever you want to call that, is saying that it doesn't matter because there's so much happening that we need to take these claims seriously until we know otherwise. So that's the I say that supports the claim. So again, they say switch, which in this case is regardless, which is my transition word. And then here's what I say. Both refer to the same two images we started with, but you'll notice in this one, the counterargument part, or the B of the I say, that's highlighted in purple, is more substantial than the what they say, because the point of this is to prove my argument, okay? So let's kind of look at that in a bullet form of what a counterargument paragraph should look like. First and foremost, you want to start with that topic sentence where you're stating your argument. So if we go back quickly, my topic sentence was that race, regardless of what a once vocal majority says, is still a problem in America. That is my topic sentence. Notice I haven't jumped into what they say yet. I am starting my body paragraph with the argument I intend to make by the end of it. Okay? Then my first supporting idea is that they say. I'm going to present evidence from a source that I disagree with or some form of opposition, and then go into the I say. One thing I would add is on the sample, remember we have that idea of the switch. When you move from the they say to I say, you need to have some sort of sentence, phrase, transition that kind of explains that you are moving away from what they say. So a common one is however, regardless, nonetheless. Those are all good ways to kind of signal a change in the argument and a change in the direction so that when you get to your I say, it's really clear. And that's where you're going to explain why that opposition is wrong. You're going to provide evidence. If we look back at my sample, I refer to the target painted on the Muslim American, and then you're going to do that commentary which explains why this evidence disproves that opposition before you conclude and explain to us why your claim or your observation, what you say, supports your thesis for the overall paper, okay? Now I know it's probably really abstract to kind of put this together, but I do want you to kind of internalize this little outline right here because it's really just a step-by-step topic sentence, my claim, what am I arguing? Next, they say, next, switch, next, I say, next. Why does it matter? Because that structure is going to be the grounds for a really successful counterargument.